Millions of Facebook profiles allegedly used for political purposes. Information that could have helped Donald Trump and influenced the Brexit vote. Can data swing elections? And is privacy really possible in this age of social media? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Social media giant Facebook is under fire amid allegations that the data of millions of its users was misused for political ends. A British political consultancy firm, Cambridge Analytica, harvested the information through an online personality test. This was allegedly used to help both the Trump presidential campaign in the US and groups in favour of Brexit, Britain's exit from the European Union. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg denies any wrongdoing, saying the creator of the personality test app acted illegally. But that hasn't satisfied the US Congress, the UK Parliament, nor the European Parliament. They've all summoned Zuckerberg to answer questions on user privacy. Meanwhile, Cambridge Analytica has suspended its boss, Alexander Nix. A whistleblower from within the company revealed what was being done with the data.
Cambridge Analytica was birthed out of a company called SEL Group, which is a military contractor based in London. This data was used to create profiling algorithms that would allow us to explore mental vulnerabilities of people and then map out ways to inject information into different streams or channels of content online so that people started to see things all over the place that may or may not have been true. This is a company that really took fake news to the next level by powering it with algorithms.
So how did all this happen? Well, in 2014, 270,000 users downloaded an app, This Is Your Digital Life, and took an online survey. This meant their Facebook information could be accessed, but it also gave the app access to their friends' data. A total of more than 50 million profiles were accessed and the information sold on to Cambridge Analytica for political purposes. Now, Facebook says this violated company policy and it received assurances in 2015 that the data was destroyed. But there are now reports it wasn't. Instead, it was used to create psychological profiles of voters. These were allegedly used to help the Trump presidential campaign. Trump's campaign manager, Steve Bannon, was on the board of Cambridge Analytica. OK, let's bring in our guest now. In Pittsburgh, via Skype, Larry Magid, CEO of connectsafely.org. In London, Jason Moon, an ethical hacker and internet security specialist. And in Rome, Hasselbalch, co-founder of DataEthics.eu. That's an independent think tank promoting data ethical products and services. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us today. Larry, start with you. We've got two rather unsettling aspects to this story, haven't we? One, that personal data was harvested. The other, that it was used to manipulate voters. But who's the real bad guy here? Is it Facebook or is it Cambridge Analytica?
Well, or is it the professor who gathered this information, presumably for academic research, and then provided it to Cambridge Analytica? Facebook is blaming him, saying that he violated their agreement, although he is actually pushing back. I was reading just an interview with him a few minutes ago, I think with the BBC, where he said that, in fact, that what he was doing was perfectly normal and par for the course. But I think there's a lot of culpable organizations and individuals in this. Obviously, Cambridge Analytica, although this is the business they're in, they brag about this. I suppose that's what they do. Facebook needed to be more careful. They have since said they are doing a better job vetting these apps and claim that this wouldn't happen again. But also, I think that the fact that it's not only the 270,000 people, but as you pointed out, it's their friends. It's the fact that when somebody gives information to an app or a game or something on Facebook, they're not only giving their own information, and I think that's fair game if they know what they're doing, but they're giving information about their friends. And I question, is that really the way you treat your friends, to disclose their information unwittingly just because you want to play a game or use an app?
But they didn't know about that. That was the point, wasn't it? Facebook didn't make that clear.
Right. Facebook, I think that if you read the permissions carefully, you will notice that you are turning over some public information about your friends. Now, it's information your friends share publicly, but nevertheless, you're turning that over. and that's usually in the disclosure. There was a type of disclosure here, but again, people click on apps all the time. They don't read all the fine print, and certainly they had no way to know that the information would get from this researcher over to Cambridge Analytica and eventually into the Trump campaign. That nobody knew, including Facebook.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Jason, let's look at this, Professor. I mean, was it perfectly normal behaviour to give Cambridge Analytica all of this information?
Well, I mean, what we have to remember is this is how Facebook makes its money. This is a big part of how Facebook makes its money. I think it's morally repugnant what happened, but I don't know whether you can really blame the professor as such, because it's kind of like, Einstein taught us how to split the atom, but then other people made nuclear bombs with that. Facebook provided the sort of facility for this abuse to take place. I think the Pandora's box was first opened actually in 2013 by, this whole thing, it's called psychometrics. Psychometrics has kind of been, the power of it has been really known since about 2013, where there was a sort of an online experiment done with it. And I think that obviously tweaked the interest of what then became Cambridge Analytica. So, they have they bear some of the responsibility, but it's not like this wasn't known about. Of course, they've exploited this information to the nth degree, and it shows you the sheer power of it. So hopefully now there'll be some clamping down on privacy rights and stuff for just normal people on social networking platforms. But I don't think any one individual bears the full brunt of the responsibility here. The blame does go sort of between all parties concerned. They've all been very, very slack and not really forthcoming and honest about how bad this has been either. Constantly sort of wiggling out of not being truthful about the numbers that have been involved or anything. Even now trying to deny that they bear any responsibility.
Greed, do you broadly agree with what's been said so far? This whole business is rather unsavoury, but not necessarily illegal.
I'm not sure if I agree completely. One thing is with Facebook, what they created is a whole business model around harvesting data, personal data on people. They have a design structure of their platform that is based on tracking people and so on and so forth. And in general, if you're looking at, for example, from where I'm sitting, from a European perspective, and now with a new EU regulation, there will be much tougher legal provisions and requirements in regards to the design of your platform, the way in which you retrieve consent from people. You can't do the same kind of invisible collection and sharing of data that is in some way, I would say, it's embedded in the design of Facebook. So in many ways, I see a lot of responsibility and lack of accountability of Facebook in this case.
So you say that Facebook was built around the gathering of this kind of information. The very nature of it makes us give Facebook this information. But did it ever intend for this information to be used in the way that it has, to influence elections?
No, of course not. There's policies against this, but I'm talking about the design. If you create a platform and a technology where the design is made to track users and to actually use data for different ways, then with every technology it can both be used and it can be abused. And what I see now when I'm following is I see a movement of technology businesses and companies that are creating different kind of technologies where you can't track users and that are based on different kind of business models that are not necessarily made to track or to follow users around and collect data en masse. And I think that's the direction we need to move in. There's been a particular development in the way in which technologies have been developed and business has been developed online, and this needs to change. And what supports that change is, of course, the new EU regulation, the different provisions, things like data protection by design, which is a design requirement, or provisions on consent, informed consent. Different requirements in regards to data profiling. So these things have to change.
Larry, the EU, the UK, Washington, they're all calling for Zuckerberg to come and present his case. He said he's going to be speaking within the next 24 hours of the time that we're now recording this programme. You've met Mark Zuckerberg. What's he likely to say?
I think he's likely to be somewhat apologetic, I would hope. I would hope he would be very transparent. I would hope he would be open for not just suggestions, but the possibility of some type of government, if not regulations, at least some type of oversight, because I think that we are talking about things that are affecting the public sphere here. Just as, for example, television and radio in the United States. You can't take an ad, a political ad out on television or radio or even in print without disclosing where the money is coming from. So I hope he would be open to a greater amount of transparency. But I do think he has to come forward. I think it has to be him and or Sheryl Sandberg, the two top leaders. And by the way, in answer to your last question, I think initially these technologies on Facebook were designed for commercial purposes to sell products. But they figured out before the 2016 campaign that there was a market for political advertising. And in fact, they put out documents talking about how they could segment their audience and how you could reach people from very liberal to very conservative and everywhere in between. And they could deliver you a specific audience based on at least certain gradations of political ideology. I don't think they ever intended this level of psychographic research getting into the hands of a campaign, but they certainly eventually decided they were in the business of selling political advertising and giving people a lot more granularity than you could get on television or in print.
Yeah, Jason, it's true, isn't it? This information, it's immensely powerful and therefore presumably immensely valuable. Do you think it has actually managed to sway elections?
I do. I think it's definitely quite a powerful, quite a potent contributing factor. I mean, it's kind of daft in a way because it's sort of obvious that it could be used for this. In that, like the other guest said, it was used to deliver you adverts and psychometrically profile you to decide what to influence you to buy something. So it's not that much of a step from that to influence you to vote in a certain way, perhaps. Or perhaps to abstain from voting, because this is the important thing, where there's a lot of sort of evidence to suggest that it wasn't so much about making you, because I think people think there's no way, I'm a liberal, there's no way you could get me to vote for Trump. Yes, but perhaps you could be influenced to abstain from voting in your specific state, and that could be a very, very powerful tool to manipulate the outcome of an election. Things like that. And I think the public have lost all ability to check, to be able to sort of gauge what's real news, what's fake news, and all the rest of it. I mean, like you were saying, some of the examples about, broadcast media and things like that. I mean, how is it, I don't see Facebook really doing much. They said they would, but they haven't done much to sort of thwart this immense problem with all the fake profiles and stuff, which make all the the troll bots and all the rest of it. I mean, it's so difficult to tell if you're even arguing with a real human being if a Facebook page is posting news links and it's an actual real human being that's posted them. Are the news links even real news? It's a nightmare for your average sort of Facebook user to distinguish between what's fact and what's fiction. So there's a lot of work that Facebook could be doing to help resolve this problem, I think.
Greg, give us some examples of exactly what Facebook could do to make users trust the content that they see more.
Well, as I said, it's a question of design of the service. So I'm not sure if Facebook can actually do that, but I think that you can design technologies that in a way from per default respect users' rights and keep your data safe and have technical safeguards. I mean, in general, if you have an API that shares not only the profiles that you access to, but also the friends. That is a specific design of a technology that allows this kind of sharing of data. I think you need both in terms of technical design, different kind of technical design of services, but you also need a different kind of accountable process as a company. And then, of course, we need a law that is implemented. That is actually you have a system around where users can get help and where you're supporting this development.
Larry, do you think we can ever stay ahead of the curve here? I mean, now, of course, Facebook has said that it shut down this ability to share users' friends' profile, but of course that was done after the event, after 50 million users' information had gone out. Are we ever going to be able to proactively work in this situation?
Well, ahead of the curve is perhaps a little bit more optimistic than I would be, but if you can sort of keep up with the curve or be slightly behind the curve, that would still be great progress. I think there are things they could do. For example, when we talk about the bots, there are ways to know that a human being is at the keyboard versus a machine. So there are ways you can virtually eliminate bots. There are ways you can require more transparency and enforce more transparency. Artificial intelligence, I know it's often hyped and maybe won't deliver all that it promises to do, but certainly there can be some algorithms that can begin to catch some of these things. And also a lot more human moderators throughout the world, not just located in countries scattered throughout the world, but for example, when you're talking about the U.S. election, human moderators based in the U.S. who understand U.S. culture can probably go a long way towards helping at least to moderate some of these more crazy exchanges that are going on, whether they're between bots and humans or troll farms staffed by people, but not actually organic discussions. These aren't helping things. And of course, the other is transparency in advertising. Know where the money is coming from and who the actual advertiser is.
Jason, how much of the responsibility should come down to us as the users? I mean, it could be argued that the information was there. In the fine print, it was said that your information was freely available. I believe it was also said that your friend's information was freely available. No one reads those terms and conditions. They're so small, they're in a completely different area, and they take forever. But should we now be paying more attention?
I think, well, one lesson to be learned from this is don't do any more of those IQ or personality test things that you see constantly shared on Facebook, that's for sure. I do think that it should be illegal that I can share the information of all my friends to a third party. So there should be a line drawn there. And if this highlights anything, it highlights that is sorely lacking. And they need to legislate that, because I don't think you can so much blame the user, because like you say, you can't read all the reams and reams of small print. You wouldn't really even understand the ramifications of that anyway. And even if you did understand that and you just decided, oh, I don't mind sharing all my friends' data, well, your friends might mind. So I think that should be illegal. You should be allowed to share your data, and it's your own fault if you don't read the fine print. But you shouldn't be able to, share the information of all your friends. That's wrong.
Okay. I mean, this information, Jason, we've covered that it's been used for advertising, it's been used for voting. What else could it be used for, do you think?
Well, this is the scary thing. I mean, now the full sort of power of it has really been highlighted. I mean, where could it lead? I mean, I think it's done quite a lot of damage to the sort of fabric of the culture in a way. I mean, we've seen incredible polarization through this process, which has only been exacerbated and sort of fueled by this process, this technique. And there's massive polarization across sort of racial, ethical, political, social divides, all the rest of it. And then obviously culminating in the extreme example of, putting what you could say an alt-right president in the White House. So it's certainly dangerous stuff, and they need to look at it very, very, very carefully, because it goes a lot deeper than just arguing with some sort of troll on a Facebook news comments section or whatever. I mean, I think it can potentially be quite harmful, and and it's an infringement on your own personal privacy. So I think it's more serious than the reaction that Facebook has so far given.
Right.
Doesn't seem to be in sync with exactly how serious this is, in my opinion.
Larry, do you think Zuckerberg has taken that on board?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the consequences are enormous. I mean, Donald Trump likes to claim that all of the Russian interference, if it happened, he hasn't fully acknowledged if it has happened, didn't have any impact on the election. And, the fact is that when you think about how candidates legitimately spend money, they buy lawn signs, they buy television advertising, they go out and give speeches. All of these things are designed to sway votes. And if those work at least a little bit, it's hard to imagine that the massive amount of online data manipulation and propaganda hasn't had some impact, especially when you consider how narrowly Trump won in a few key states. He lost the general election by 3 million votes, and he won some states by as few as 40,000. I think that this stuff is enormously powerful. And by the way, getting back to that very good suggestion about keeping people from sharing their friends' information, Facebook says that when you share your friends' information, you're only sharing what they share publicly. And a lot of us on Facebook tend to share far more publicly than we may realize. And if I may put in a little plug, my own website, larrysworld.com, I have several articles on the front page about controlling your privacy on Facebook. I don't think you should have to read my blog to know how to do this. It should be a lot easier. But the fact is that if you take the time, you can limit what's publicly available on your profile, and that could have kept you out of this database, or at least some of your information out of this database. But again, I would like to see that a lot easier and perhaps the default rather than something that you have to engineer.
Yeah, I mean, Gree, that's sort of part of the problem, isn't it? Do you take the time to go and adjust your privacy settings and everything on Facebook? The way it's set up is so quick and easy to use. You mentioned before that there are other technology companies that are developing alternatives. But really, is anyone going to take the time to find out about them, to switch over? I mean, Facebook is so pervasive, isn't it? We're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's up to the users to figure out this. There's loads of alternatives. I think it's going to come all by itself. We're kind of in a data ethical wave, you could call it, almost like the environmental movement. And you see it all over. The law, the new EU law is in a sense a symptom of this change of awareness around what the role of data as power, information as power, these different kinds of technologies. Like, for example, if you look at the legality of what has been going on now, then I mean, from the 25th of May, when the EU data protection regulation is truly implemented or goes into place, there's several things in this case that wouldn't be legal at all. For example, in the way in which you get consent from users. Facebook has gotten consent from users to use their data. The way that, in general, the thing of sharing your friends' data is not. It is illegal. So there's several things that movement. It's a whole culture movement, a whole societal movement that I think it's gonna change itself, just like the environmental movement. Right now, today, if you're a company that you're not environmentally aware, if you don't if you don't treat the environment well, you'll lose in your brand, you lose customers, you lose your investors, and I think hopefully I am optimistic in that way that that both technology and law and users themselves will make this happen.
Okay, Jason, is it too late though? I mean, our data is already out there, isn't it? And there's no reassurances from Cambridge Analytica that they've deleted what they gathered, and one wonders how many other companies have it.
I wouldn't believe for a second that they've deleted it. I mean, there were photographs taken the other day outside their offices where they were what looked like trying to dispose of huge amounts of documentation. I mean, what's in those documents that they were getting rid of and moving from the offices before the investigators raid them or whatever? Yeah, I mean, the Pandora's box has been opened, the damage has already been done. So, of course, it's great if things get better, but I mean, it's already influenced, 2, perhaps more elections. That's pretty bad collateral damage, if you ask me. I mean, I would love to see a system whereby even a simple sort of red, amber, green or something, so people at least had informed consent, like maybe around every news item that you see on your news feed, the source is graded and there's a box around it which is either red, amber or green, sort of denoting, like the guy was saying, gradients of, how reliable that information might be, the source of that information. Just, I don't know, simple things like that would be relatively easy to implement. And why do you have to fight with the settings? Why are the settings automatically at share everything, and then you have to be a kind of tech expert to fight with it and figure out how to, you know what I mean? It's
exactly.
There's not much cooperation coming from, Facebook.
Absolutely, and until we get that cooperation, I'm going to go to Larry's page and check out how to increase my privacy settings. Thanks very much for that. Larry, thanks also to Jason Moon and Gree Hasselbalch. Great discussion. Thanks for joining us on Inside Story. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, it's bye for now.